Welcome back, everyone, to today's masterclass. Let's just jump right in, shall we? Today, we're stepping into what I like to call the laboratory of language. We're going to demystify one of the oldest, most beautiful forms of human expression. Yep, poetry. As your professor for this explainer, my goal isn't just to throw a bunch of academic terms at you. No way. We're actually going to look at the exact blueprints poets use to build their absolute masterpieces.
But hey, before we look at those blueprints, let me ask you something. When you read a poem, what do you actually feel? Does it give you this profound sense of joy? A sudden wave of sadness? Or, let's be totally honest here, does it sometimes just leave you feeling, well, incredibly confused? Look, if you said confusion, you are absolutely not alone, and that's exactly why we're studying this today. Poetry is literally designed to evoke complex emotions, and once you understand the mechanics behind it, that confusion, it transforms into pure appreciation.
So here's our syllabus for today's explainer. First, the architecture of form. Second, sensory imagery and sound. Third, decoding figurative language. And finally, theme and context analysis. All right, part one, the architecture of form. This is all about building the physical bones of a poem. Let's map out a poem's musicality just by looking at the last word of each line. Think of this as a live board work, okay? We label the first ending sound with an A. Roses are red, so red is A. The next line ends in blue, which is a totally new sound, right? So we label it B. The third line ends in sweet, another new sound, making it C. But check out that final line. And so are you. You perfectly matches the sound of blue. So we label it B again. Just like that, boom, we've uncovered an ABCB rhyme scheme. It's this underlying structural pattern that makes the poem so satisfying and honestly just really fun to recite. Now, beyond just rhyming words, form is really driven by rhythm and meter. The most famous building block of poetic rhythm is the iamb. So an iamb is basically a metrical foot, consisting of one unstressed syllable, followed by a stressed syllable. Think of it. It sounds exactly like a human heartbeat. Da-dum, da-dum. This rhythmic pulse naturally drives the poem forward, giving it this living, breathing momentum. Let's actually test this out together right now. I want you to snap or clap along with me as we read this line, "The sun will rise again today." Do you feel that? Da-dum, 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 da-dum. That is the iambic meter at work. When a poet strings these feet together, they're creating a musical flow that is incredibly catchy and really deeply embedded in how we naturally speak. Okay, so those lines of meter are organized into larger groups called stanzas. You can think of stanzas as the paragraphs of a poem. They group ideas or images together. But here is the poet's absolute secret weapon, line length. A poet can literally physically control the speed of your reading. Short lines, they feel fast, sudden, exciting, kind of like quick beats in an action scene. Long lines, on the other hand, absolutely force you to slow down. They feel calm, flowing, reflective. The poet is essentially dictating your heart rate through typography. Moving right along to section 2. Sensory imagery and sound, or as I like to call it, painting with words and rhythm. You know, great poetry doesn't just tell you a story, it totally plunges you into it using all 7 types of imagery. A poet paints for the eyes with visual imagery, like a golden sun, but they also write for the ear with rustling leaves, or the tongue with the sweet burst of ripe mangoes. They even use kinesthetic imagery to show action, or organic imagery to evoke those deep, internal feelings, like a warmth spreading through your chest. A master poet plays these senses like keys on a piano. It's really something else. And just like music, poets use specific sound devices to create harmony without a single instrument. Let's compare 2 of the big ones. Over here on the left, we have assonance, which is the repetition of vowel sounds. The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. You hear how that long A sound creates a really smooth musical rhythm? Contrast that with consonance on the right, which is repeating consonant sounds within words. The lumpy, bumpy road. That repeating M sound literally makes the phrase feel as jarring and textured as the road it's describing. It's brilliant. And we definitely can't forget our other essential tools. Alliteration relies on repeating those starting sounds, like Peter Piper picked. It's incredibly catchy. Then we have onomatopoeia. These are words that physically imitate the sounds they represent. Words like buzz, splash, or crash. When a poet uses the word splash, the word itself sounds exactly like water hitting a surface. It brilliantly pulls you straight into the action. All right, let's dive into section 3, decoding figurative language, taking things way beyond the literal meaning. So The most foundational tool for imaginative comparison is for sure the simile. By using like or as, it creates this psychological bridge. It anchors a complex, unknown emotion or an abstract concept to a familiar physical object that we already intimately understand. For example, look at this. Her voice was as soft as a whisper. We instantly understand the exact volume and the gentle quality of her voice because it's directly compared to a whisper. It paints an instant auditory picture in our minds without overcomplicating things. But what if a poet wants to make an even bolder claim? Well, that's exactly where the metaphor comes in. A metaphor skips the like or as entirely. It just straight up states that one thing actually is another. It fuses two completely distinct ideas together to create a singular, incredibly powerful image. Take this classic metaphor. Time is a thief. Now, obviously, time doesn't wear a mask and pickpocket you in an alleyway, but by stating it is a thief, the poet captures the emotional devastation of realizing that time, quietly, inevitably, steals the precious moments of our lives right out from under us. Talk about packing a heavy emotional punch in just 4 words. As we rapid fire through some advanced figurative tools, you'll see poets getting even more creative. Personification breathes human life into nature. Suddenly, the wind whispered. Hyperbole uses extreme, almost ridiculous exaggeration for effect, like saying you're so hungry you could eat a horse. And then we have the oxymoron, pairing completely opposite words together. Think about the word bittersweet. It's genius. It perfectly captures that highly complex human emotion of, smiling through tears. Finally, we arrive at section 4, theme and context analysis. This is where we find the true soul of the poem. Reading a poem without knowing its context is honestly kind of like finding a mysterious, unsigned letter in your attic. To truly understand it, you have to play detective. We look at biographical context. What was the poet personally experiencing? If they were a soldier, a poem about a battlefield hits completely differently. We look at historical context. Was this written during a pandemic? A massive revolution? And sociocultural context. What were the society's values and beliefs at that exact moment in time? The context is essentially the soil from which the poem grows. And all of this, the form, the imagery, the metaphors, the context we just talked about, it all points to one ultimate destination, the theme. The theme is the big idea. It's the core message or the universal lesson the poet desperately wants you to understand. Whether that theme is the resilience of the human spirit, the agonizing pain of lost love, or the slow march of justice, discovering the theme is the ultimate goal of our analysis today. So, class, it is time for your final exam. We are going to analyze a modern lyric together right now. Listen closely to this. I still wonder how you always make it right. Either way, you showed me how to reach for the best of myself. I want you to really think about what structural and figurative elements are hiding inside these modern verses. Let's grade this together. As this song continues, the writer uses a brilliant metaphor, sailing on across an open sea. Now, they aren't literally on a boat. They are navigating the vast, anxious unknown of life. Then, look at the contrast they build. They juxtapose tumbling in the dark and cold with eventually finding the best of myself, all because someone showed them the way. By tracking that structural contrast and metaphor, the theme becomes crystal clear. This is a powerful message about growth, the absolute importance of guidance, and the journey to finding your true path. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the true power of poetry. It takes the sheer messiness of the human experience and gives it rhythm, shape, and profound meaning. So my fellow focus learners, I leave you with this final thought. You now possess the exact blueprints to build a poem. Look around you, look at your own history, your own environment. What is your context? And more importantly, what poem will you write today? Thank you so much for attending this masterclass explainer. Keep analyzing, keep imagining, and I'll catch you next time.